really?
Crocodile.
That was, he went a bit soon then. Because that, okay, do it again, because if you then try and spike it and you've got 2 different claps, you won't be lined. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Better.
Have to retake the clap. Rookie.
All right, Dynamic Pursuit Playbook.
Yep.
This is our episode number 2. Today, reflecting and looking at our key takeaways from the conversation with Phil Learney, which was as insightful as ever. I'm going to let you start with this one, because I know you've got a running score that you want to pick up on from our previous playbook episode.
Yeah.
Dive in.
I was reflecting on this one, or get ahead of this one, thinking, I'm like, you're going to be a little bit smug today. It's your chance to win. If we had to
on what
put
exactly?
our case forward for,
On what metric?
Like around sleep hygiene, sleep quality, bedtime routines, caffeine intake.
Do I only get 1 point for all of that?
The list just keeps going on. I was like, I don't even think I need to put a case forward here, Tim.
But does that only give me 1 point on the who? So this is becoming a running score now. Like every time we have a guest on, the major takeaway: who wins. People are going to think we were like hyper competitive with each other. We're actually not. We're extremely supportive of each other.
Well, it's just a little bit of fun.
Okay, so you have got better bone density than me.
Yeah, I think so.
concluded.
Well, we've concluded.
Non-scientific, not like validated by a DEXA scan or anything.
No,
but
but
just
if
purely
we have to stack the deck in my favour,
to make a case without the use of science. So without the use of science from an allostatic load, sleep hygiene, general living within controlled parameters or controlling the parameters of my circadian biology, I get a score on that one. Should I tell you why? I'll put my own case forward.
Okay, you go. I can see you're wanting to go there.
Well,
go on then.
One of my reflections from the conversation is it's been a work in progress, and some of the stuff that Phil was talking about, where the scenario that many people will find themselves in, like we cumulatively together and independently have been working away from that for some time. That's not new news to us, but to a lot of people it will be. They'll just find themselves in a trap, and you can see it all over the place with people you come into contact with. So the danger with this episode today is that I sit here and be like, got it all sorted. So what else can I add to that conversation? And I thought Phil did a great job of just breaking down what people need to know. So I haven't got loads to add to it.
No.
But one of the differences between you and I, which probably helps me win this little, whatever this is, ongoing competition, is that I am far more patient than you. My general level of patience, which I think is probably directly correlated to allostatic load. And Phil said, depending on where people grow up, can determine their allostatic load. Yeah. Now, you grew up in a house with your dad, and his allostatic load is high and not at all well managed. If you were to take a case study for all the things that Phil says that you shouldn't do, I love your dad, but we could probably find him ticking a lot of those boxes. And not
well, and I mean, going back, like that, in my childhood, yes, you're right. Like I grew up in a household with my dad, and he was high-performing professional. He had multiple sites, offices, big teams that he was managing.
Your dad can work.
And he worked incredibly hard. I have not met anybody ever.
You say to me sometimes, you go, Tim, you work hard, but it's nothing like what my dad did.
Like, and not to like, wanting to put that grind mentality, but he did, and at a time in South Africa, he built a really, really big business, and he was exceptionally good at what he did.
To contextualise that, your dad was the best awarded the Architect of the Year, like 7 years running for the whole of Africa.
Yeah, 7 years on the bounce.
And he built and designed a house for Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
And did Soccer City for the World Cup in South Africa.
Yeah. So I think the stakes were high for him. So yes, I think to being kind, he did have a high allostatic load, but I grew up in that environment, and he was driving us to school, because for us, school started early. It was 20 kilometers away. Literally,
What did your dad used to do whilst he was driving?
He used to dictate his letters that he wanted his PA to type up to send to clients in the car, so he'd have his dictaphone. And he had his diary, paper book diary, on his lap with like a pen and post-it notes. Like he was doing all of that whilst he was driving.
Yeah.
I mean, he managed it.
So I think that the interesting thing is because your dad is like he's lived in that high stress environment. You actually have a default, which is like your threshold for moving from calm to reactive is far different to mine. Like, and that was probably one of the reasons why I was like quite proficient as a scuba diving instructor and as a coach, is because my natural state is quite patient. So I think that helps from an allostatic load perspective.
But also, I would like to add to this mix, because I was talking to another mum friend who runs her own business this week. And she mentioned around mum load.
Mum load, that's a new thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Well, non-scientific, more non-science. I like it. This is supposed to be a credible and authoritative podcast.
Yeah, but all the mums out there who are listening to this will know what mum load is.
Go on.
It's that extra load that we carry and it's, I guess, not to be, okay, maybe we call it mum load, but this could be for whoever is the person in your household who is looking after all the extras.
Yeah.
When it comes to school uniform, is it clean, is it ironed, I need whites, I need blues, like dark washing, light washing, have you done all of that? Have you given time for dry? Like you're having to think about 3 steps ahead, like meal prep planning, like lunch boxes, water bottles, schedules, routines.
Don't go on about it.
So it's like, it's the sort of thing that you don't even think about. That just happens at home. It just happens.
I think about it. I'm aware that you do it. I just don't.
Yeah, you think about it when you see, it's done. It's like, there we go. Yeah, the guitar bag's packed, and
that is true.
I think it's that extra load that whoever is the primary person responsible in the household for all those things when you have got kids, is an extra load.
That doubles down though when you are running your own business as well. Because there are always all of the pressure and the things that come with that. People have got in high-performing careers as well. Like if they are kind of getting after it in terms of that side of things, there is all of that stuff. You're right. I'll give you mum load.
Okay.
I don't know how you
that's a little tick in my direction.
I don't know how you quantify mum load on like some kind of metric. Right. Let's move on from allostatic load. But the idea being, actually, just before we depart that subject, is that we are looking to manage that and try and get it to a place where, like Phil's point, where you go to sleep, the ideal is that you wake up with a low allostatic load. And I think that's reflecting on that. There's a little bit around that sometimes seasonal, because it can be periods, and we've had periods in our life where you are in high stress. And I remember certain times where I would go to sleep stressed. You're not sleeping well because you've got all of this stuff going on in your mind. You're waking up feeling stressed because you know what's coming in the day ahead potentially. That's a difficult season to manage. But then I think that's where having some awareness of the things that can influence allostatic load. Like you made the point of going, if you're waking up and then doing all of those things which are anxiogenic, and you're already maybe like not emptied that vessel that Phil talks about, like your allostatic load is already starting at a relatively high baseline, you're just starting to set that day off on a anxiety driven focus, and it's really difficult to pull back from that. Like when you're in an anxious state, you've got to kind of, the only way to get out of it is to stop, breathe, do something else, relax. Like if you're not careful, that will just pull you into the day, and all of the day, like, I'm stressed all day. We started off just by increasing the things we're going to make that day stressful, which are actually controllable, which is the big thing, right? Sometimes stress isn't controllable because there's other people involved, and other factors involved. But there are things that we have in our daily routine which we are choosing to do, and therefore can be controlled.
Yeah, and I definitely felt like that was something that actually stood out for me from the interview with Phil, was because, like you said before, we've been on this journey for a while and known about these things for various different reasons around caffeine. Like I went through a phase with that because I was one of those people. Like I definitely drank a lot of caffeine, morning, day, afternoon, evening. Sleep was terrible, and I went on a journey with that, and my cutoff point is midday and has been now for some time. So you've kind of like I've known about the impact on of caffeine and that on the impact on your sleep, and like the whole, like you said, we've heard this thing before of like, don't look at your phones before you go to bed, and yeah, find myself and I still do that. But what I found really interesting was the morning side, because I've never thought about it like that, like the whole thing around the alarm and having this like siren alarm going off that you have in the morning.
You used to
that
have the
like
worst
literally
alarm.
Jumping out of bed like, yeah, I'm awake.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a year. I don't know. Looking back on it, something that I would have changed is there was a time where, like, the alarm that you had on used to be. It was horrendous. It was like that weird kind of like, it's on Apple. It's called By the Seaside, because I looked it up, and it's like this strange kind of like Punch and Judy type. You know what Punch and Judy is as a South African? You got any idea what Punch and Judy is?
No.
It's like a puppet show, which is like quintessentially British.
Okay.
But it just represents, like, so your vision of what the British seaside is, like, it's like kiss me quick hats and arcades and candy floss and that kind of like.
But when I think by the seaside, I'm thinking calm and rolling waves and.
Yeah, that in Britain. Unless you go to the secret place that we go to, which you can't tell people about because they'll go there too. But it's like you had this alarm, and it was like every morning it's like bow, 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 and you just like awful. I hated it, and I don't know why I didn't address it. That should have been something I should have picked up.
Which we've changed recently, and I will give you that. It has been much calmer, relaxing start to the day. But like, and then having a caffeinated drink in the morning, like.
You still do that.
I still do that, but I'm starting to think, I'm like, I know that is going to elevate my stress levels. It's anxiogenic. So I think that's something I probably, because decaf and like, I just want a coffee because I really enjoy a coffee, a good quality coffee with nice beans, and we get ours from our roasters, and it doesn't have to be caffeinated.
Yeah.
And I could actually delay that, because the day itself is going to be bringing, like you say, the uncontrollable things of environment and work and all the extra stresses that's going to happen throughout the day. But the things that you can control, the early start of your day, from the moment you wake up, like we have that in our control to some extent. I mean, I can't control the kids in the morning,
as much as we
running
try.
around and play fighting and then the one's crying and all that. I can't control all of that, but I can control how some of the other things, and I think that is something that I never really thought about until the interview with Phil.
I'm not going to take a hard line on it. Like, it's not that I will never drink a caffeinated coffee, but if I have a choice in the morning, there's a high chance, because of having now had the caffeine with the L-theanine that Phil spoke about this in Rise, it's a much more gentle ramp in. So when I have a caffeinated coffee now in the morning, I get that jitters, and I don't like it, because it makes me feel like that. I'm into work. I feel like I'm edgy. So I actually was in London yesterday. Went for a coffee because I was early for my sessions, and I chose at 8:30 in the morning a decaf coffee, which is, I don't know, why would you do that? I just like drinking a coffee.
Yeah. Still had a really nice, expensive flat white.
Yeah, £4.15. Yeah, and I needed to sit somewhere and do some work, so I needed Wi-Fi. So it was rent more than anything. Yeah, anyway, but I think if anybody's listening to this and they haven't addressed some of these things, go back and listen to the podcast. Phil covers everything you need. We don't need to tell you those things again. No. But start putting some of that stuff in place, and start with the low-hanging fruit, because I don't want to go into like how good our routine is, because it has taken time. But the quality of sleep that I get and my energy levels through the day as a result of it are remarkably different to what they have been in the past. Yeah. Okay, let's pivot and talk about pivoting.
Wow, I see what you've done there.
It was weak, that. It wasn't strong, but I've got pivot written down in my notes. I'm trying to change our direction of travel for a conversation.
Right.
Now, one of the reasons when I wrote the questions for Phil around asking him and kind of like pushing into that conversation around his dynamic pursuits was I was hoping that for a guy who's been very successful in his career, done lots of different things, that there was going to be a really insightful and valuable story to share with the listeners around a time where he felt like he had his back up against the wall and he had to change. And then how do you navigate that? Because we've been in that situation, and it's really difficult, and I don't think people talk about it enough. What Phil had then brought back in response to that was that he'd always been very strategic about when to change. And I'm sure there are incidences.
I don't know which one you want to
hear. Where there was a little bit of pressure to have to change.
Yeah.
But he very much spoke about like he'd done a lot of things on his decision basis. Like he'd made those choices to change. I wanted to go and contrast that a little bit with our story, where we found ourselves multiple times actually in situations where we were up against it, backs against the wall, and what that experience was like and what we could potentially offer as reflections on that. So that we've now got kind of like two sides of the story, right? You've got what does it look like if you're strategic, and that's your best play, do that more. Yeah. And what happens if you do, by circumstances, bad luck or whatever, find yourself in a situation where, right, flipping heck, I have to now change, and it's not a great time to change. And we found ourselves in a situation like that with a 6-month-old baby and a 4-year-old. That was not a great time to start again, but we did.
We did.
Where do you want to go with that? That's not very much question.
Yeah, I was like, where's the question here, Tim?
So aside from what Phil was reflecting on or sharing, what are your reflections on a point of where you had to change because you found yourself in a situation where there was a need to do something different?
Yeah, I think. I mean, and
is that some internal? Are you doing some work internally there on that? Or are you just trying to formulate your thoughts?
I formulate my thoughts, and like, where do I want to go with this? But I think, I mean, going back now, because that was really the start of our business dynamic shoulders, is the scenario that you're talking about now. And I think there were, and I think many businesses and entrepreneurs can probably relate to that time, because all the different variables, environment had a huge part to play in that, because COVID happened. And
so we launched Dynamic Shoulders in 2021.
Yeah, basically. So that was, exactly. So after having run a business, well, you had a business with other business partners. I was doing work for that business, working with you guys. COVID came along, and many people relate to that time, because I'm sure there's many entrepreneurs just like us that went through that phase, and
the landscape
shifted really quickly. I mean, yes, you had an online business, but 50% of the revenue was coming from offline, which was just literally cut away like in an instant. Like suddenly it's lockdown and we're not doing anything, and it wasn't just a month, 2 months, it was a very long time, and nobody could foresee that. So from that perspective, we were in a place, I got pregnant.
Lockdown baby.
Nothing
else to do, was there?
Well, no, I wouldn't. We decided and planned to have a baby at that point, but anyway, not to go down that route. But yes, lockdown baby, and and we got faced with a decision. What do we do? We're faced with a choice at that point.
Yeah, but it wasn't preempted though. It was almost like, I don't know what it was. I remember going for a walk, and I was walking around the woods.
What we gonna do?
Like, it was literally that conversation of what can we do? What could we do? And it was like start again. It was a tough decision actually.
But that was a decision, a choice. Like now in reflection, the choice could have been go and update CVs, go and get a job, which didn't even really. I mean, we did discuss that.
Flirted with it, didn't we?
But neither of us felt ready at that point to be like, no, like we want to have our own business, because from the dream that we have and the vision that we have around freedom and being able to move, I've got family in South Africa, you've got family here, and wanting to be able to travel and have that flexibility around our schedule and be in control of how we run our day. And that was our why essentially was quite big for us as to why we wanted to stay in entrepreneurship. So we made that decision to start again.
But we've been self-employed for a long time, and you hear people say this all the time, is when you've worked for yourself for long enough, you actually become unemployable. Because when somebody says you can have 24 days off a year, you're like, well, I don't want 24 days off a year. And you might take less, but I'm choosing to take less. I'm not being told what to do anymore.
And when you can have it. But
I also think this kind of links in a little bit with Phil's point around a lot of stuff that he'd done would be to prove other people wrong or to prove himself wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that we've always felt with entrepreneurship, because we've been in building phase for a long period of time in different businesses, that we've got unfinished business there, in a sense. It sounds like a terrible pun. But we've never got to the place where we feel like we're capable of. And there's a lot of different variables involved in entrepreneurship, which can make that an extended journey, and it makes it a pretty complex thing to do at times. But I think we were like, well, let's do something. We wanted to work together. But what were the things that we did, do you think? Because we actually grew the business in year 1 to 6 figures, which from zero, like no followers, no audience, nothing, to 6 figures in year 1. You tell most people, like, that's decent. That's a good start.
And we got paid from day one.
And then to your point before around allostatic load, like we go in there together, all chips on the table. That's how I often describe it to people. It's not like you go and get a job to prop us up while I go and start this thing. It's like all the chips on the table. We're both in it. This thing has got to work. It is that typical,
what's your like burn the boats?
Burn the boats. Like, if you want to take the island, burn the boats, because you've got no way of retreating. So put yourself in a situation where you have no other choice but to be successful.
Yeah. And that's commitment, isn't it? And when you're committed to something,
you'll make it work.
To that point, like you're going to act, you're going to take action, you're going to get stuck in, and you're going to do the things, even the things that like scare you or you don't want to do, or you like, oh, can I do this? That doubt thing. It's like, yes, you can be afraid, yes, you can doubt, but you're going to have to do it anyway, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, but the action is the real key point there. Like, you come across people all the time that are like, they have these dreams of doing something, but they're also sat in a pretty comfortable position with a career and a job and an income and a salary and a life which has been built around that whole kind of ecosystem. Whereas when you don't have those things and you have burnt the boats, the only thing you can do is act, because you don't have time to sit around and think about it. So I think changing that environment, putting a little bit of pressure on yourself is not a bad thing. But then you've also got to kind of, in an ideal world, if you talk about the potential magnify or improving the potential success from starting a business, it is to start it as a side hustle. And this is in Adam Grant's book Originals. Actually, more businesses are successful if you've got some kind of steady stream of income and then you start something on the side, get it to a point, and we've done this before, and I know a lot of people that have, it's never quite enough. Like, you never quite, like, I earn 60 grand a year. Getting a business to the place where you're putting 60 grand in your pocket, let's say minus tax, a year isn't a short process. But can you get it big enough so that you can then jump, and then people don't know that you're available and what you can do until you make yourself available and you've got more time. So that is a nice way to do it. Get an income, build a side hustle, and then pivot across, and then go all in.
And that's definitely the most advisable.
That's the more strategic way to do it.
That's the way I would recommend to anybody who is thinking of starting a business to start.
Yeah, I would.
Don't start all in with the baby and a toddler.
What's the lesson from your journey? Just don't do what we did.
Learn from our mistakes.
Don't be in your 40s and start from that situation, because it was for a couple of years it was aggressive in terms of the pressure that we were under to get going. But I think the key thing there is going, okay, aside from our experience within that, is action. Action is the thing, right? You have to make decisions, you have to move forward, and accepting that it's going to be an iteration. I don't feel like with our business, and particularly in how we deliver the business, and it's probably across the board with marketing as well, is that we haven't ever had a period where we're not iterating in the first 3 years, because you've just got to get your minimum viable product out. And I am a perfectionist, recovering, trying to be better in that regard.
Progressionist is like
that's the new kind of like cliche term, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you want to make the perfect thing all the time, but you just don't have the resources, the knowledge, the market insight to be able to do it. So the only way you get that is by just being okay with good enough and getting stuff out, and then but having a commitment to iterating as you go to improve it. But all of that starts with that first action, and everyone goes, yeah, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just need to see the first step. But actually taking that first step, I think a lot of people get stuck there, and then they realise that actually it's a pretty steep, long staircase. I don't want to go down that route, and yeah, it is. It has been for us. It ain't easy, but it all starts, and even 3 years in, action. What are you doing? Move forwards every day. How do you claim a little bit more of that land and get yourself further away from not being able to retreat because you haven't got any boats left? Something around that. Anything else you think there would be a key kind of from having a situation where we had to change, apart from just taking action? or reflections on how to avoid getting into that situation? You've probably got some more insight around that, I think, about how to avoid finding yourself in a situation where you have to change. You've got some, like, what are the preemptive things that you could have done before?
Yeah, I think two things really come to mind for me because of in my journey to being in a business with you in Dynamic Shoulders. Like, there was the phase where I was working with you guys for your business, and then there was also a time where I owned a business in partnership with somebody, and that experience, and also got to a place where I made a change of selling my shares in that business. And I think, but for the two things is like, one of them is the warning signs, I think, for us both being, I mean, although I would call myself, or certainly have been in the past, probably I would see myself more as a pessimist. You're the optimist, usually, or realist, shall we say, is that we see the vision, we see the hope, and we hope that things are going to work out and how it could be, and what we are trying to build and create. So we see that, and sometimes I think, and perhaps that was the lesson there, is that there are warning signs when, and trust your gut in that. If you do feel things are a little bit out of place, like, challenge it, like get the answers that you're looking for, rather than being like, oh, I'm sure everyone's got good intention. I'm sure it's like that whole thing around assumptions, right? That it's going to be okay. Like, if there's things that are bugging you around partnerships or products or finances within the business, whatever the issue might be, where you're feeling like there's things that could be better, it's challenge it, work on it, and get that resolved early, nip it in the bud, effectively. I think if you see those things, like, it's important to take note. So trusting your gut there.
So I'll pick up on that, because this is one of the things I think just comes to mind around that, is that it's really difficult, if not impossible, at a certain stage of your business, of launching a business, where I don't know that you can work on and grow more than one business at a time. And I've heard people say this before.
So partnership, really, like, what makes a good partnership?
Well, partly that, but also thinking that you've got to, there comes a point where if you're starting a business and you're also trying to be strategic, you can't be like, I'm going to spread bet. You can't be like, I'm going to do this thing a little bit, but I'm also going to go and start this other thing, just in case that thing doesn't work out. I've got this thing as well. I don't think that works. So my experience would be that you've got to go all in on that thing. And probably where people get to run and manage multiple businesses is they aren't immature businesses, and they aren't the controlling or the founder of those businesses. You can come in as investor maybe, and then you get to kind of like play a little bit across the top level. But if you are the founder with the IP, the kind of the boots on the ground of getting this thing going, you have to commit.
If you're a fundamental part of that business growth. Yes.
And I think everybody needs to be on the same page with that. So anybody who's involved in the business needs to need the business the same way.
Yeah.
If they are then having the same responsibility and the same share in the business to grow it or whatever it might be. So I think that contrasts a little bit with like what your strategy is. So it's, what is the strategy around launching the business? What's the market opportunity? And then knowing that you're going to have to go for that for a while and forsake other things for a period of time, because you cannot launch and grow multiple businesses at the same time. I just don't think it's possible to do it well.
And I think that was going to be my other point that I was going to make, was around like partnership. When you're in partnership with other people, so within your business you were 3 partners. The business I had before, it was me and another business partner. It's making sure, like, I think that what you've said there around everybody, if it's a partnership, for it to be a true partnership, and I think that's probably the definition of a partnership, is that everybody needs to be putting in to the business at equal measure, and need the business in equal measure, because now you're working for each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's that, and then the other side of it is always making sure that the vision is aligned, of what it is that you want to see within the business and where you want to grow it in. And I think that was the first thing I learned within my business was fantastic partner on paper, fantastic fit with what my skill set was and his skill set, but
and a really good,
and we
really
had a
good
really
guy.
good relationship.
Yeah.
We worked really, really nice guy.
But the vision
but
was
the
different.
vision was different, I think, and I'm sure he would agree with that. What I saw for the business, and I think what he saw for the business, was not on the same page.
And the difference is that your situation was what you needed the business to be, what that represented to you from a career revenue perspective.
He had a great career and a full-time job, and head coach of a really notable swimming club and Olympic coach, and he had all those accolades, which is amazing for our business, was fantastic. But I wanted a business that I could grow into and grow, and I think for him maybe it was more of a side hustle of like a top up for salary,
which is cool, right? If that's what you want, but it's getting very clear on those things, and that's probably, I think, one of the reflections that I have of being a real optimist, and I am and have been massively trusting of other people in that. Like I give you my trust until you lose it, which is sometimes like you go into these relationships with like, I'm just going to go all in because I'm expecting I'm going to get all in back from you, and sometimes that doesn't always play out because people's situations and circumstances change. So it's not always controllable.
And that's the point, isn't it? Maybe when you start off, the vision is aligned, but as things evolve, I think that's a really good practice, is to keep coming back to the vision of like, are we all still on board with this?
Yeah,
is this the vision that we're all going to go with this year? And then next year you have the same meeting and go through that. I think that's a really valuable piece because things do shift and change and evolve, and the bar gets raised and you want to go to the next level, or somebody doesn't, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and addressing those things, as you said before, preempt them, and you have to kind of have those potentially difficult conversations, but willing to flex. The businesses have a life, and it's like it's a big thing, and it will kind of change. Yeah, very good. And then last thing, this is one that we both struggle with and I think a lot of Type A performance-minded people do, is that you move from success to the next project without ever really taking the time to reflect and credit the work that's been done, to appreciate that moment in time where we worked hard, or just on a smaller basis of what did I do today which was a win. Because sometimes in business you go through the stages where, and I'm sure people have this in their careers and their lives and parenting, everything, where you can just feel like you're not getting anywhere, or there's a lot of hard in that. So taking the time to actually count the wins and recognize the successful moments, because it's very easy with that Type A mindset to always live under a cloud of it's not good enough, because you can dream and you're ambitious and you can see where you want it to be, either from like say for us what we want ultimately the business to be for us and our lifestyle, or for the impact that you want to have in the world. There's always more to do, and nothing, like Jen said to me the other week, my friend Jen Robinson, it's like your business is always broken. People from the outside won't see that, but inside there's always things that need doing and need fixing. So nothing ever feels like I've made it, we did it. So I think that daily practice, and it's not one out of the things, I don't think I'm great at it. Like it's something I should be far more intentional about, and I probably need to have some way of documenting it, because there then is an act of trying to do it as opposed to just playing around my mind that what have I done today that was good. But you're quite good at it. You sometimes go to me, give me a win for today, Tim, give me a win.
Yeah, but I think that's a more recent thing, because I've seen trying to, because I'm a bit more of a pessimist, and I tend to I can find myself in a negative mental state quite easily, and have done in the past. Like I feel like this is something that I've really found of like how to get me out of that funk, and way of thinking is to like, what am I grateful for? And it is a practice. I think is it's a small thing, but it's huge, the impact that it can have on your mindset. And having that practice of like, what am I grateful for? What are the small wins? Like anything, just what, it doesn't have to be a big thing. And I think on that point, like I on reflection, I think I have been that kind of person who has just always gone on to the next thing and not taken the time to recognize an achievement. And so I've constantly, because I've not done that, I would look back and I'm like, what have I achieved? I've not achieved anything, and I feel like a failure and I'm not good enough. And, and then you go in that spiral of thinking where if I'd done a better job of that from childhood till now, I'm sure that would have put me in a better mental state.
It's a mindset shift. Like I was reading in my Bible this morning, like one of the Psalms around like shifting from a state of what have I not got to what have I got. And it's so easy, I think, when you to fall into the trap with the business, as I say, is you can always focus on what I need to do and what's not good enough, but actually shifting that and going, what is good, and just if you can make that your energy on a day-to-day basis, what is going well, whilst dealing with the things that need attention, that is a much happier and more peaceful place to live, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a way better mental state to live in, of going, we're doing all this stuff really well. And if you have a system and a strategy, then to a point there's a certain element of just like, it's a matter of time, keep stacking wins. Like if you could just count the wins and just build those over time, like good things will happen.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is around like what is good is on your terms, not on someone else's. So what might be success for me, and the measures by which I measure success will be different for other people, and I think that's an important thing to look at as well. It's like not do that comparison game.
Yeah, my friend, quite all my mates today, Joffy is my best mate, Mike, apart from you obviously.
Oh. Hey.
Best male friend. We might get on the podcast at some point, but he said to me, like, stop comparing against things that you don't actually want.
Yeah.
Because the world tells you that like success is materialistic, right? What do you own? How much money have you got? All this kind of stuff. And the system of the world is set up to get you to earn more and spend more, and basically keep you at a state of like, well, just like I've never got enough money, despite earning more money and having more things. But yeah, he would say like, just don't compare against things that you don't want. Why are you beating yourself up? Because he goes, you can go and get those things if you want, just you can have them, but you're choosing not to. So why are you beating yourself up because you've not got them when it's actually a choice? I was like, that's profound. And that's where social media and these sorts of things don't help, do they? Because everyone's portraying what they've got and how good they are. And
the highlights reel of people's lives, like.
Yeah. And I think that's what we want. These kind of like playbook sessions to try and be as just a very open conversation about this is what it's been like from behind the veil. Like this is what the real experience has been like. Because Hormozy does a good job of this. Like, what does that quote he put out this week? There was one around like, just go for it, because you're either gonna be successful or you're gonna have a great story to tell. And either way, when you get to your deathbed, you're gonna be glad of either of those two things. So you might as well just have a crack at it. So I think it's just understanding that what the stories behind those things and what we're experiencing. Sometimes I would like to hear other people experiencing the same thing, because it gives me confidence that we're not
alone.
Yeah, we're not failing, we're not losing, like we're doing this is just a natural part of what it looks like to live a dynamic pursuit, if you want to coin our own phrase, of trying to move forwards, and it's always going to have to shift and evolve, and it is never going to be linear.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, you mentioned failure, and I think for me, I'm really working hard on like reframing and not actually using that word in my vocabulary when I'm reflecting on things. It's not a failure.
It's a lesson.
It's a lesson. What did I learn? And I'm going to take that forward. And if you're winning all the time, you're not learning.
It's like what Adam Grant's thing is, like, what is the power of knowing what you don't know? Well, if you try something and it didn't work out, now I know that doesn't work, so don't do it again. That's actually knowledge.
It's more valuable to take that insight from what didn't work, so that and then you build on that, and and it is about learn, iterate, especially in business and entrepreneurship. Like, how many iterations is going to take before we have our light bulb moment, right? Like, and we have that success story. So we'll keep going. All right,
we're going to wrap it
action.
Up. Last one then, because I just thought it was funny. Phil said that when he was working with Nick, he was referring to Nick Mitchell.
Okay.
Nick's a very prominent figure in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
And he said that Nick had once, I think, written an article titled "If Bodybuilders Ruled the World." And it was this idea of like, what happens if somebody with that level of discipline and a willingness to put themselves voluntarily through a significant level of like hardship and difficulty, what would the world look like? So you don't know a lot about bodybuilding.
No.
And you've never been a bodybuilder, and
no, clearly.
But so if in your mind, if bodybuilders ruled the world, what is the first thing that comes to mind? So you go to bed tonight, you wake up in the morning, bodybuilders are in charge. They've made some quite rapid changes. What does the world look like through your lens? What's the first thing you think of?
Well, I've got two pictures in my head, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is that reel that, I mean, it's years ago that you showed me this video clip of this bodybuilder, of him describing his diet, and it's around like, I'll have a fish and a rice cake, and then I'll have a rice cake, and then I'll have a fish, and then I'll have a fish.
It's legendary. That guy's like massive now. They're a proper bodybuilder, but that video's had millions and millions of views. It's a classic. But he's just got frozen fishes, frying it in a pan with rice cake. I'm like, oh, there's better ways to do it than that.
So maybe like that picture comes to mind, and then people wearing little pants.
Yeah. So you've got people in small pants eating fish and a rice cake. That's what you think's going to happen. What a world that would be. I'm probably right in saying that the bodybuilding nutritional science has moved forward since fish and a rice cake, and he was a bit behind the times at that point anyway. I showed that video to Jack once and he thought it was hilarious. Fish and a rice cake. Good. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Because
but it is a fair point, right? The discipline, it is like the discipline that those guys go through. Like, not that I follow bodybuilding, but I mean, to get your body in that physique, it requires discipline, huge sacrifice. I mean,
to a level
they're not eating cake and chocolates, are they? Those guys.
That's why you that's where you've fallen at the first hurdle of bodybuilding, isn't it? What do you mean I can't eat cake and chocolate? It's not for me.
It's not for me.
I'll just go and do some sports which burn a little bit more energy, therefore I can justify
so I can
the things
have
that you like.
Twix and...
Twix. Karen says the Twix is the perfect chocolate bar because it's biscuit and chocolate and
so
caramel.
during the day, it's perfect. Otherwise, it's a fruit and nut,
Twix.
dairy milk, fruit and nut.
I will never...
It's good. It's sweet and healthy.
No. All right, that's it. I'm not going to go down that conversation of what's the best chocolate bar. Well done.
Okay.
Hopefully some honest, open reflections around journeys, experiences, and hopefully people can apply that into whatever situation they're in, particularly if they're running their own business, thinking about running their own businesses, transitioning in careers. So, have you got any final remarks?
Nope. That's it.
That's all, folks. Is that it? Yeah. That was coming up to a nice crescendo around fishing around. Oh, no, sign off.
Don't start a business with a toddler and a 6-month-old baby.
Back over. Next podcast, Charlotte Henshaw.
Yes, very exciting.
Paralympic athlete with one of the best stories around the dynamic pursuit that I've ever heard, and I was fortunate enough to work with her directly for a few years, so we're going to get that one put out next. If you've enjoyed this, share it with somebody for us. Game ain't easy.
Give us a like.
Follow
Give
the page.
us a follow.
Yeah, do all those things. I probably should have said that in the outro, but maybe this is the outro. I can put that backing music on. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.